Ashley Village. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to discuss a transition period between one grade to the next. In this case, from grade 6 into grade 7. So depending on how you have your grades ordered and arranged and what different levels or what schools you associate with them, this could be different for different families and schools of thought. So I'm going to share mine, and you're welcome to take what you can and apply it. So traditionally in just regular old American school, kindergarten is first, and it kind of, even though it's seen as an elementary grade, it kind of still exists on its own. And then you have elementary school, which is first, or sometimes K, kindergarten, through 5th grade, traditionally. And then you have what's called middle school, where it's 6, 7, 8. Unless you went to a school or a school in your district where 6th grade is its own academy, and then grade 7 and 8 would be junior high. And then you have senior high, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Unless you went to a school where 9th grade was its own academy, and then 10, 11, and 12 was senior high. So that's what's typical in American education. So now I'm going to share ours, which for the most part we run K4 and K5 together. Not together like in the same year, but it kind of sits off to a side, and it's just kindergarten. So K4 is kindergarten, K5 is kindergarten, kindergarten 1, kindergarten 2, if you will. I don't really call 4 like preschool, because it's at that point it's school. So K4, K5. And then when we go to the next set, I consider grades 1 through grades 3 like primary school, or elementary can work there as well. I say primary here at home. I probably say elementary when I'm blogging and shooting videos, because it's what everybody understands. I even had one lady, she's like, "Are you from the Caribbean? You say primary." I'm like, "No, I just have been educated in education, and that's the more appropriate term that I see fit." Okay, and then we're going to move on to grades 4 and 5, which I would consider like upper primary. You may see me say like lower grammar and upper grammar. Sometimes I use that when I am writing either like history or literature, like humanities based subjects, because that is more accurate in that subject or in that domain. But here at home, I just call 4 and 5 like upper primary. And then we get to year 6, grade 6, where we treat it as a transition year. So it's neither exclusively all upper primary or all junior high. It's a hodgepodge of both that starts off in upper primary, because that's what they're used to from grade 4 and grade 5, and then graduates, and as the year progresses and it turns over into junior high prep or junior high, in order to prepare them for the next phase of school. So for us, grades 7, 8, and 9 are like junior high, but we still use grade 6 and grade 9 as transition years into the next. So then obviously senior high, which I call secondary, is 10, 11, and 12. So there are schools that put 6th grade alongside 7th and 8th, and 9th grade along 10th through 12th, but there are some where 6 and 9 have its own academy in order to transition to the next phase. And that's even true in kindergarten too. Like there are some schools who have like K4 and K5 or K5 off on its own as a transition before going into 1st grade, which is like officially a primary school student or an elementary school, elementary age student. So that's kind of how we have it broken down. And not, even though I put 7, 8, and 9 in junior high category, 9 would still be a transition year going into secondary or going into senior high. So in this video, I'm going to discuss our transition year in grade 6. Okay, and there's no way I can remember it all. So I have my notes here. You're going to see me look down to reference them. And I'm going to do my best to get through it rather smoothly and rather quickly because we did a lot. I mean, it's a transition. Anytime you're transitioning with anything, there's a lot that comes with it because you are really having a life change or some type of change, career change, life change, money change, whatever transition, in this case, educational change. Okay, so what I wanted to specifically address was course load, independence, study skills, and expectations. And expectations included his as well as his father and I. So parental expectation as well as student or child expectations. But I'm going to talk more from the parental expectation side because like naming out his expectations is not going to help you implement or take what you can from this video and apply it to your homeschool. Okay, so and then I did those 4 course load, independent, study skills, and expectations. I used what is called the executive functioning skills to help guide us through that process. Okay, so let's start with course load. With course load, I wanted to begin teaching him like organization. He's already been rather organized as a homeschooler, but just some like independent and on purpose organization that would be happening at a scheduled or at a consistent time. Like every week, this needs to happen. Daily, this needs to happen. And you're responsible for doing it type thing. Also pacing and structuring his time and his work incrementally. Another thing, to achieve 150 hours. Let me stop there. So anytime you are going to do a transition, it's good to look ahead to what's to come and then work your way up to that so that you have time to get that together. Because if you just go straight from this thing to that thing without any transition or without any time to work your way up to it, it's a whole lot harder task to accomplish. The struggle rate is high and the failure rate most of the time is even higher. So that's the purpose of that. So what am I transitioning him for? I'm transitioning him in order to work well and satisfactory, accurately at the secondary level. So we consider grades 7 through 12 the secondary level. And then there's 2 groups of school within that. There's a junior high and there's a senior high. But nonetheless, this is secondary education. So it's not going to work like primary education. And so he needed a year, grade 6, that year right in the middle that's going to divide primary from secondary education to transition into that. What do secondary students do? What does school look like for them? Right? So the purpose of secondary education is, well, one of them. One of the purposes of secondary education is to graduate high school, right? To graduate that secondary for different reasons. People have different reasons for wanting to graduate high school, but nonetheless, like that's the point. There used to be a time where secondary education was optional because graduating high school was not necessarily necessary. But it's, a thing now. It's expected. It's not necessarily required because you don't have to graduate high school in order to move on into adulthood. But it's highly expected, especially if you have career goals or sometimes even money goals. It just depends on what the student wants to do or their own personal goals later in life, later into adulthood, right? And so that's where a good conversation comes. We really had to sit down with our son and say, okay, you are getting ready to enter the year. That's the halfway point. And so what do you see yourself doing? What are you good at? And we were real about that. What are you good at? What are you not good at? What flaws do we see? What strengths do we see? We even enrolled him in an independent, like project-based school so that he could begin to work on some of those things. And that was just a really good conversation to have halfway through. At that point, they are about 11, turning 12, depending on birthday, 12, turning 13. And so they have an idea. So we're not looking for, him to know exactly his whole life plan or even his whole academic plan, 7 through 12. But we are, at this point, starting the beginning of developing that. And so we need something to work with. Yes, it'll shift, it'll change, it'll develop, mature, grow, what have you. But we need something to work with, baby steps, something at the beginning, that first step that has to be made. So we had a conversation with him. We definitely explained, again, those same things: strengths, weaknesses, what are you good at. And then there's other outside factors that will influence what you're able to do and when. Budget, resources, means, access, skill, what have you. Okay, so the achieving 150 hours, back to that. What he needs to do in our state, students have to earn 150 hours in a particular course in order to earn a CU or a Carnegie unit, right? So if you have a rising 6th grader or even a rising 7th grader, because this transition period can happen whenever you like. This is the year that we chose because of how we divide up school and because he was ready. So if your student isn't ready, then you don't have to do it at the same spot in their schooling as we're doing it, but you want to make sure that it gets done. So for us, those 150 hours is just what's necessary. It's required. So I want to gradually get him to being able to do that easily. So I'm not expecting for a 12-year-old student to necessarily achieve that, but I am marking it to say, like, let's really track that time, which that was our first time doing it. That was one of the things that we did in our transition year. We really clocked, and not like stopwatch clocked, but we became cognizant of, wow, how much time did you spend in that subject? And then at the end of the year, we could look at that and go, wow, you spent 144 hours in math. And so I think 144 hours is actually one of his subjects. So at the end of the year, I just set him down and said, so you would need 150. So this is 6 hours short, right? So now that I know that, I understand that I need to plan out his coursework, or he needs to do some extra time, whatever. And so I also explained, if we got to the end of the year and you only had 144, you'd be doing things in the summer so that I would guarantee or make sure that we had 150 hours, because that's what's required. I'm not looking for him to do it in grade 6. I'm just looking to have an idea where he's already performing at so that I can plan out whatever the difference is. But then also stamina. So you doing that 1 year in grade 6, but if you can't repeat that and be consistent in the next year, so we're going to test that out, as a rising 7th grader this school year. That's one of the things I'll be looking at as his teacher, as his mom, making sure he can keep that stride, right? And so whatever, let's say he had 120 hours in something, like, wow, we have a lot more hours to add. So I probably wouldn't add all of that the very next year, but I would incrementally begin to add and graduate what he's doing so that by the time he needs to perform it or pull it off, he's done so without a lot of struggle, without a lot of inconsistencies, and just, being stressed and being overwhelmed, right? So slow and steady wins the race type thing. So, and I just made him cognizant of that. Like, he was like, wow, I have to have 150 hours. He never knew that before because there was no reason to know that. But as a secondary student, you need to be cognizant of that, right? I mean, if they're going to a traditional school, the school is already set up and laid out in that way. Unless you had like a lot of absences or whatnot, then you would need to make that up. But here at home, we don't have that ability to go, oh, well, you were absent, so it was a school day, even though you missed that work. So that's okay. You're still going to graduate. Like, we still have to be able to show 150 hours. So that's that. The other thing that I taught him kind of in the same course load is like how to read a syllabus. So I created a syllabus for him. I created a syllabus for each core subject. So I'm not ready to go through syllabus on electives right now. I really just want him to work on what's required. Let's get stable in that. And then we will add on electives, which in some, you can make an argument for electives are required in a sense because you have to have a certain amount of them in order to have the credit you need total in order to graduate. But I just was worrying about the core. He ends up having 5 core, our state: math, reading, English or like language arts, social studies, and science. And then I add on another one that's required. So he has 6 required like core subjects. Okay, and then I explained high school requirements. So I printed out, all of the courses that our state offers. And that's one of the cool things about being a homeschooler. So this is where we get the leg up, where we kind of had a small con that I just mentioned. Now this is where you get a leg up. So it's a big, thick, fat, if you live in the state of Georgia, it's a thick, fat list that I printed off for him. And of course, the thickness, it has every course from every age, like beginning all the way down to K4. So I just, print off my PDF from grade 7 above. And I'm like, you can take anything you want to take. And so in that case, it's more like college, where you have the whole course catalog and you can choose what you want. Whereas in high school, you can do that, or in traditional school, you can do that, but you only can do that for the courses that school has available or is willing or is staffed to teach. So you are limited, whereas for homeschooling, you got that whole list is available for you, what you want to learn. So I went through that with him. These are all the courses that you can take as a 7th through 12th grader. And the reason that's important, and I'm saying probably because I'm not sure, but I'll probably touch on this before this video is over. But the reason that that's important is because in grade 7 is an important year. And the reason that it's important is because you can begin to earn high school credit. So whereas in prior years, I'm not going to say that you can't, but there has to be some leg work and paperwork, and there has to be certain things done. But grade 7 is just, this child can begin to earn coursework, at least in our state. So that's another reason for that transition year in 6. It's like for things that he was really, really good at, that I was like, wow, you really could do this on a high school level, even if it was just 9th grade. I'm like, I asked him, I think you can do this. So would you like to attempt to earn high school credit in grade 7 for this subject? Because this one, buddy, you do really well, right? You might as well get it. You're able to earn it. You're going to be excelling and performing at that level anyways. Let's go ahead and get, a credit. So of course I had to walk him through explaining high school requirements. So I printed out the high school courses, like I was saying, or the secondary level courses. It's not just high school. And then we went through and did some mapping. Like, okay, we walked through the whole process. You need 24 credits for if you want to get this kind of diploma, 22 if you want to get this kind. This is what's required if you want to do this. Is there anything you want to take? We just kind of walked through that. I didn't sit out and chart out the whole high school plan. I just wanted to hear what he wanted to do and start making some notations. And then I also explained GPA, explained how it's calculated and why it's important. And then I explained how to score and record. So we still don't call it grades. I guess we probably will need to soon because he'll be taking sourced courses, and that's just what everybody calls it. But we've called it scores, and they've had scores in math and in reading pretty much from the beginning. Not quite, not like kindergarten, 1st grade, but as soon as they were able to understand the math behind the scores, so probably 2nd or 3rd grade. And it was just simple then, right? It was like, okay, I need you to do these 5 subtraction problems. And then they would do it, and I would go, wow, your score, you got 4 out of 5 correctly. So let's fix this one so that we can have them all correct. Things like that, right? But in grade 6, I am relinquishing some of that responsibility to him. So the majority of curriculum that I bought, I made sure it had a score so that he could his math worked like that. What else? Oh yeah, we did Latin American history, or we called it Black and Latin America. Some of the resources that we used had like an answer key or like a score key with it. And so when he got done with his work, he would take that score key and he would assess himself. That's such a valuable skill. I mean, I use that even when I taught high school, in public school. That's just so good. You save out a lot of like preaching to them or just having to reiterate a lot of things, sometimes even nagging some teachers, because they begin to self-check and self-assess. When they do that on their own, their quality of work begins to increase because they start to see what they're doing wrong and they don't want to. Like when they miss so many, they're like, oh, what am I missing? What am I doing? They become more cognizant of it. And so their accuracy increases oftentimes when they are able to self-check. And if not their accuracy, which most of the time it does, definitely their effort. Right? So that process really helped him develop and become like a better student. And he was already a pretty decent student in most of his subjects. He has one subject he's just not a fan of, but he's a pretty good student, but it helped. And then I taught him how to record. And I'm like, listen, you have to start being responsible for your own education. It can't all be on me. So when you get done scoring and you see that you got an 18 out of 20, write that down. Write down. And I created a score chart for him. So write down that the name of the assignment and the date and that you got an 18 out of 20. Because we could get to the end of the marking period, which for us, every 6 weeks. And this has happened before in 4 and 5, grades 4 and 5. And I'm like, hey, where's that math test? You're supposed to have 12 out of the whole year. We're missing 2. Where are your other 2? I don't know. Like, okay, we do at least know what your score was, and that was okay in a sense for grade 4 and grade 5, but it has to not occur, not be accepted in secondary school. Like, come on, you got to keep up with your stuff. I mean, it's human error to, do certain things, but we need consistency and stride in you just doing what the expectation is and keeping up with your things. So I taught him how to score and record, and he loved that. He didn't like necessarily like, oh, it's another thing to do, but he liked being able to like keep up with it and that independence of, I got this, that sense of self. And he really liked it when we got to the end of the market period. I'm like, well, where's that activity you did? Or where is that? And he's like, I'm gonna find it for you, but in the meantime, I got 92. Like, he knew and he loved that, especially when I was like, I don't know that you did that. Are you sure? And he could prove that he had. And I was like, and that's why you keep record with your scores. When you actually get to senior high, you may be taking a course with somebody outside of me. You may need to prove that you submitted something or that you got a particular score on it. And even more so when you get to college, if that's what he decides to do. So he didn't like initially that it was like more work. Not that he didn't like it, but just kind of like a human nature to be like, I got more to do. But what it gave him and what it allowed him to be able to do, he loved. So then, of course, that gave him a greater sense of, I'll score and record my work. Okay, so I also, let's see, what do I have here? Oh, right. So I just walked him how to do that throughout the year. I'm not leaving him, to himself. I am just making sure he does it and understands what he's doing and why, as is the expectation for secondary education. Okay, so again, I want to just continue to repeat. He doesn't have to achieve it all in grade 6. That's ridiculous. He has until grade 8, possibly even grade 9 to get there. So that by the time he is at senior high level, particularly taking courses outside of what his father and I teach him here at home, he's able to rock and roll. I want him to be able to log in, access his materials, be able to get a syllabus or get a course of work and start mapping out what he's going to do on what days, how he's going to do it, how much time he's going to spend doing it, record the time that he did it, record any scores that he's given from his work, be able to communicate with his teachers or professors professionally. Like, we also I gave him an email account, his own, that I still monitor, but his own in preparation of sending professional emails. So he has to send one to me. Like, I'll send an email out to say, I need this from you. He'll send it. And it actually worked, because halfway through the school year in January, we enrolled him in a project-based school, like I mentioned earlier, and it was completely like email based in another app that they used, and he had to, respond that way. And so he was so grateful to me. Mommy, thank you so much for showing me how to do those things. Like, I feel like I can communicate with my teacher. I know what she's saying when she uses certain words, etc. Okay, so again, that's that for coursework. Next, moving on to independence. So by 12, 13, students can handle a good chunk of their course load on their own. Of course, they may still need some assistance with accountability and maybe even time management, but physically getting the work done, they can manage on their own most times for either specific subjects or most subjects. So I wanted to kind of dial it back, and you can do it. Like, you can read and you can do it, which we have been practicing some of that in grade 4 and grade 6, but it hit overdrive in grade, we have been practicing some of that in grade 4 and grade 5, but it kind of hit overdrive in grade 6. So he has to fill out an agenda. And, I meant to bring his agenda from grade 6 up here with me. I forgot it. I have the one that he's working with this year. So I won't be able to show you his own handwriting, but you'll have to take my word for it, because it's not in here yet. We haven't started school. So what he does is I create labels, and I already have them labeled, and for his subjects here. So I like to get a planner that's empty with the subjects. I don't like it filled in. Not by this grade. I mean, I may deal with it in lower grades, but not by this grade. So we have labels, and the labels are color coded, and he will have them running here. So this will be ancient studies, math, science. What else do we have? History, and then language arts, reading language arts, and then electives. So he will do this before school starts. I have his labels printed. He will go through and put in all his subjects. And then what we do, we have meetings, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And I sit with him, and I'm like, this is what you need to accomplish this week. So I let him pace it out as to how he wants to get it done, but he has to record it in here while I'm present. I'm not necessarily watching everything he's doing, but I'm present for this process. That just gives him accountability. And he puts everything. So he puts his own lessons and his own agenda in his own handwriting. So we've already started certain things. So as you can see here on Tuesday, he has tutoring 10 o'clock. Because I've already started filling in some things for 18-19, even though we haven't put a whole week of schoolwork yet in here. So he will do that. That process alone just helps him be, again, cognizant that he has to do it. If he is looking at what he needs to do, transferring that into an agenda based on how he wants to pace out his week, where he wants to spend that time, how long he wants to spend it. Sometimes we have certain requirements like, well, you have to read for an hour or something like that. But other than that, he can be fluid and flexible and move around here. Then he retains it more. Whereas in the primary grades, I'm pretty much doing a lot of that. So, it's like, what am I doing, or what do I have to do? Or what was the other question I used to get that I didn't like that much? I can't remember it right now. But he's way more, I'll talk to him Sunday night and go, okay, you remember what you have to do? Yeah, I know I have this on Tuesday and this on Wednesday. And he's just retaining that schedule. So he doesn't have to rely on me so much to feed it to him or to, answer him. Okay, so what we do when we go through our subjects, after he has them all in, we go through and we mark them. We use SMI, and so we have colors. It's the same highlighter colors that we used in grade 4, because I actually start this in grade 4, but it gets more independent in grade 6. So it's the same highlighter colors he's used to the color code system. So there's the color for semi, which is the S. There's the color for mom, which is the M. There's the color for I, which is the independent. So what we do, we go through, and semi is either you can get started on your own and you need me to finish, or you need me to get started, and then you can finish on your own. And then mom is completely led or instructed by me, or dad. Since I put T for teacher or D for dad, so that he knows it's somebody else, that he needs. Like, you can't do this subject by yourself, so when you get here, you need to come get someone. And then I, independent. You can do this subject all by yourself. I'm going to check in with you at the end of the day and make sure it got done, type thing. End of the school day, and make sure that it got done. So we go through and we color code. So we have weekly meetings, and we go through and we do that. It takes like an hour to have the meeting from beginning to end. And I'm making sure he agrees with me. Okay, you have a new topic in math today. Is it something you want to be able to read through and work with on your own? Or do you want me to teach it to you? Or do you want to attempt it on your own? Do you want to watch a video? Like, how do you want to do it? So you have a new math skill, right? And then you can work out, like, if you're not that good in math, or you're really strong in math, like, you can remind them of where they are, so they are being, cognizant of that as they make their decision. So we go through, and for the most part, we agree because we're realistic about what we both can do and handle. And so then he has his assignments for the week. He's clear on what's S, what's M, what's I, right? And so that really helped with his independence. The fact that he put all of his things in his agenda, he knows all of the things for the week, so he doesn't have to rely so much on me. And then he even knows how he's doing it. If he's doing it completely with me, somewhat with me, or all him. Okay, so that was a lot of what we did for just like independence. And then we did more, but that's the crux of it all. Then next, organization. So even though I said he needed to score his work, track his hours, he needs a system or a tool by which to do that. I mean, he's still an 11, 12-year-old boy. Like, they need help. They can do it, but they need assistance. So I explained and went through his agenda in another video, so I won't do that, but I will show what we kind of use to handle that. We use technology too, but I really wanted him to just get used to doing things by hand, and then at the end of the week we would like dump it into the computer so that it could keep up better than we could. But I still want him to have some accountability to himself to do it on his own. So he would record what he did for that particular week and then total out the hours here. So this was a way of keeping him organized. So I didn't just say, hey buddy, you got to track your hours, and then have no tools in order to equip him to do that. So equipping is very important. You can't give a task to someone and then not give them the tools and means that they need to complete it. So every time I give him something to do, I give myself probably double to do in order to make sure he gets it done. And then also I shared in that video, but I'll show you here, a grid for scoring so he can easily keep up with that. And then also adding those lessons, but keeping him organized with it. It really helped to organize him, like, buddy, what week are you on? What are you doing here? Like that type of thing. So I really had to pace him week to week to week. So independence and organization kind of rolled together. And then working with deadlines. So there's flexibility with homeschooling that we appreciate, but then there's also the reality of a due date or a deadline that is not going to disappear because of your educational choice. So there are certain things that I went through and I'm like, listen, like for example, he had a map of the Caribbean to make as a final project when we got done studying that region. And so I created an assignment sheet that walked him through everything he needed to do. And then on the bottom was a due date. And so I was like, this has to be done by whatever, May such and such 2018. Like, you need to really work to get it done. So that's another thing about organizing his time and making sure he can be independent in doing whatever we've organized. So it's 6 weeks away from that. And this is what you have to do. How can you chunk that so that by the end you accomplish this in time, by the deadline, right? So that's what a lot of the organization piece was. And then what was that third one that I said? Course load, independent study skills. Okay, so with study skills, we also have like study skills / SMART goals, and we use the acronym for SMART. At this point, we identified your self-study needs. So I created him a study skills and SMART goals portfolio. This is the one from grade 7, because I didn't go and grab all the old stuff from grade 6 that I just put away. So, but it's pretty much the same thing, just a little bit more in depth because it's another school year. But I will walk through what identifying your study skills is. So rate yourself in each of the following categories from 0 to 3. So he sat down and really thought about this, and he rated his own self. 0, I don't know how to use the skill at all. 1, I know the skill but need to relearn and practice. 2, I sometimes practice the skill but still need support. And then 3, I use the skill and I am completely comfortable with it. So the rating is as follows. The skill is as follows. Maintaining and using a homeschool folder, keeping an organized binder, using a planner or calendar or agenda, using a daily work log or homeschool log, taking notes from books and websites, taking notes during lectures, having a designated study space at home, preparing for tests and quizzes, prioritizing my work, test taking skills and strategies, and then setting and keeping goals. So I had him complete that. We have like a little preseason 2 or 3 weeks before the school starts, where we start, I start having those meetings about what school looks like. We start working through the agenda, all of that. And a part of that I do is study skills needs survey, where he rates himself so that I can understand what he needs, right? And start making whatever I need to do for him to be successful in the school year. So that was part of that study skills portion. Okay, now I use the executive, and I mentioned this earlier, I use the executive functioning skills, and I have a little sheet about that here. Here we go. In order to accomplish all that I'm saying in this video. So there are a few, well, there's more than a few. There's a good handful of skills: planning, organization, time management, task initiation, working memory, metacognition, self-control, sustained attention, flexibility, and perseverance. So let's see. And these are from TPT. I didn't create these, but I just shrunk them, laminate them, put them on an O-ring, because we don't do a lot of posters. I do put things up on the wall in their learning spaces and areas because they like to have references to look up at sometimes. But both of them much prefer to have a personal reference and just flip. This is what they need. So I tend to just create little flip books or flip charts for their reference use. So planning. This goes through like some bullet points about what good planning is, or who a good planner is, to begin to help them. So I walked through this, him and I together, his father, in some of these conversations, to really develop a plan and a pace for the year in order to transition over into secondary, education. So planning, like, if you are a secondary student, you need to be doing some level of planning in your academia. There needs to be some level of organization. And depending on how old you are in secondary education, a good level of organization, right? Like, you shouldn't be 17 or 18 and just all over the place. Organization has to be your strong suit, but it can't be forsaken either. So time management. So these, I'm not going to read everything. So we went through this, but I will go through one card. So planning. Planning is creating a roadmap to completing a task or a goal. So we talked about that. How can we create a roadmap for this goal? What are our goals? This is where the expectations came in with him, his father and I. These are our expectations for you for this year. What do you would like to do? Let's create that roadmap. Good planners can prioritize tasks, manage their time well, and work most efficiently. Which one of those do you feel like you can't do well, you only can do sometimes? That's what we need to work on. Planning involves determining a task or goal and then determining the steps to get there. So we started creating steps to do what we needed to do. And then tools for planning may involve planners, calendars, homework logs, schedules. So we talked about these being tools, things that are in his agenda to help him be a better planner, which eventually to be a better student, and later a better adult. So we worked through, yes, all of those, making sure there's not one more that I want to read. we work through all of those, and we'll continue to work through them every year, during this junior high period until they're all manifested in him either well or way better than how he started out in grade 6, right? And then we also use SMART goals. And so he has a vision board template. I shared that also, in his planner or agenda video. So I'll throw it in the description box. And it goes through the acronym. So S is for specific, M is for measurable, A is for attainable, R is for relevant, T is for timely. And I make him check all his goals through that before he writes it out. You got to go through SMART and make sure you have everything accounted for. So that's what that process looked like. Okay, and then expectations. I'm not going to go through all of the expectations his father and I have for him, but for the most part, to transition to a more independent learner and to be more responsible and vested in his own education. And when I say vested, we mean in stewardship and commitment and diligence and accuracy and effort and completion, and even financially to a degree. So his father and I, we have a list of what we expect him to do and what we expect really to mature and manifest in him. Okay, so we kind of work in 3-year increments. So beginning with, I guess, the earliest of school was 3, so it was 3 to 6. And this is just based off age. So regardless, because a kid can skip a grade or repeat a grade or bomb a grade, right? So this is age developmentally. So we work in 3s. So 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 to 15. So now that he's over 12, we're pushing into 12 and a half, we're in the 12 to 15. So we look at the furthest in out of that. So in that group, so 15 or in that range. So 15 is the furthest out. And then we start working ourselves back. So by 15, what do we want you to look like? What do we want you to have accomplished? What do we want you to be able to do, etc.? And then we work our way back. So then if we want him to be able to do this, we've got to teach him or he's got to be able to do whatever. And that's how we created our list. So I'll give you an example and then we are going to conclude. One of the things that we had was in grade 7 to be able or to begin working on, let me work backwards. By 15 to have certain things on his academic resume, because we have different goals for 16, even though we are working on those kind of out here, but they're not as real as being that 3-year span that I talked about earlier. So because we want his academic resume to look a particular way by age 15, we have to start working on that. So one of those things that we added was an academic or an honors club or membership type thing. So I gave him a list, these are all honors societies or academic clubs, memberships. What interests you? So, but you got to choose one. So that's a lot of what we give a requirement, and we give a lot of freedom and flexibility within that requirement. So yes, you have to do that, but you can choose anyone that you want, and then we will check it through our SMART and our SMART system here and our executive functioning skills. Is it reasonable? Is it in our means? Some stuff is going to be X'd out just because those things are not true or real for you at that time. So we looked ahead of time at the requirements, and we spent the year working to get, because some of the stuff is you can do this in grade 6, or you can do this as early as grade 7. Might as well get on it. It'll look even better by the time you get 15 to say you've been doing these things for X amount of years, since it's the goal that we have. So we worked on that, and that he actually had something that he worked towards all year, and then in the summer he was able to apply for it, and then he got in. So he was happy about that. Another example would be he has a library card and he's to keep up with it, and he's had it for a while, but the vestedness in his own education, you need to keep up with it. For a season of time, he didn't know where it was, and so I'm the library gives you a card for free. So if you lost it, you can go up there and get another one, but it's going to charge you whatever the fee is. I forget, $3-5. And you have to pay for that. Like your father and I are not going to pay for that because we did our job in sending you to the library, getting you your card. I make sure you keep up with it to some degree. If you lose it at 12, like you earn a certain amount of money where you can do that. Of course, he was not happy about that. Not happy that was our expectation. He was unhappy that that was money going out of his pocket. But he hasn't lost a library card since. See? So there has to be some vestedness in secondary education. So that's what we expect. See? So there has to be some vestedness in secondary education where he is co-partnering or co-laboring with us in getting him educated. So it's still our responsibility. We still do what we have to do. However, there are things that you have to do too as the student that sometimes we can't even do. Like, for example, we're thinking about dual enrollment when he gets there. And even though the children would be minors, 14, 15, 16 years old, the college doesn't necessarily, they don't communicate with the parent directly about their grades, their work, their performance. They get their own student email and they communicate with the student themselves. So in that case, it's all you. Like, it's a responsibility for you as a student, and it's nobody else's responsibility. I mean, we have to physically get you there and make sure your stuff is paid for and all that, but the physical work that you need to do in that course, or that he needs to do in that course, it's on him. So that's another goal that we have, is to possibly be ready for dual enrollment. So what can we do here at home to mature you, develop you, shape you, so that you can transition well into an academic setting like that and be comfortable? Okay? And so I'm going to speak real briefly on meetings because I mentioned it, and then for real we'll be done. Weekly meetings. So at the top of the month, we go through the entire month together. So we have done that already for August as we're in our little preschool season. So let me show you. So you can see here, and you won't be able to read it, and that's fine, that he has everything, pulled in here or plugged in here for August. So when he asked me, can you do something? Oh, Mom, can I go? Whatever. Well, what day is it on? Or what day are you trying to do that? It's on Tuesday. What time? Whatever. It's at 3. Did you check your agenda? Go check. So I'm teaching him, you need to look at your own schedule and even make sure it's possible. Because he still needs our permission, obviously, to do certain things and to leave the house. But I shouldn't be the person telling you, oh, buddy, you have swim that day. Like, you need to look at your stuff and realize that you have a schedule conflict and that you can't do something. Or that you're willing to miss something that you do in order to do something else, but then you have to make up for that, right? So we talk about that as well. So that's at the top of the month. We go over everything. Then he takes what's in that month and he applies it to the weekly schedule for the entire month. He applies it to the weekly schedule inside the agenda because that's what he works from the most. And then we go over all his work. We put it in there. When I was speaking earlier about organizing that work and everything, that's what we're doing on Sunday. And then on Fridays, we meet for a debrief week. So Sunday is our plan day, our organization day, and then Friday is our debrief day. So we go over the week. And I subject by subject. I'm like, okay, so your math, and lots of these things I've seen at the end of each school day. But I still want him to be accountable weekly. To me, he's accountable daily too. I'm not going to get into daily because the video would be too long. But on a weekly basis, on our debrief meeting, he has to bring his agenda, and he brings all of the work he's done for all of those subjects. And if it's something that, I'm not saying that I see every single thing at the end of the day. Something could slip by. So he brings it all, to the meeting, and I go subject by subject. So math. Tell me what you did in math this week. He tells me. I'm like, right now, go ahead and summarize that in your week 2. Let's say we're in the second week of school. In your week 2 on your track hours. Okay, you spend roughly how much time each day? 45 minutes in math. And then he, may say, for an exception, he may say, except yesterday, it only took me 15 minutes. It was a quick quiz or whatever. Cool. So let's add that up and put that in the time. Sometimes the exception is that it was an extension. Mommy, I normally do 30, 45 minutes, but wow, that assignment you gave me on Tuesday was long. Whatever. He might have even broke it up because he'll do that in a minute. He'll be like, oh, he has like 20 minutes and then he has to reset to something else. He'll come back to it though. He's pretty good about completing, but he doesn't want to sit and do something for too long. And that's fine. That's the benefit of homeschool. So, okay, tell me what you did in language arts. So I did this. And then I'm like, I'll look at my notes. I normally make a check each day when he shows. I'm like, why don't I have a check, for you here? Let me see what you did in language arts on Wednesday. Was that an independent day? Open up your planner. Let me see, things like that. And we'll give an account for it. So I make sure all those scores are in there for the week. I make sure he's written that summation, of course, work for that week. And then because I have to do it weekly. Otherwise, sitting down, trying to remember something from 10 weeks ago is hard. So we sit and we do it, and it keeps him organized, keeps him paced again. That would be our debrief meeting. He has all of Saturday to not think nothing about school. He pretty much has all of Sunday to not think about school either, except for our meeting. And both meetings take about an hour. He has to, and he knows. He's like, Mom, I know our meeting's at this time. I'm going to go and take a nap or whatever, and I'll come back down with my stuff. Sometimes he asks, can we meet an hour earlier? Because I want to go do this. Can we meet an hour later so I can do this? So I have a flexibility. We do have a standing time, but we do have flexibility if he really wants to do something. I'm not going to, make him just, oh no, we have to meet, type thing. We do have to meet on Sunday, but I'm flexible with the time. And when we meet on Sunday, throw it all in there. He's cognizant. He goes all week through it. And then on Friday, we make sure that he did it. Kind of how it goes. So then our goal is to establish familiarity and comfort with study skills, independence, expectations, and coursework using executive functioning skills by the end of the year, which is what we did in grade 6. He did that well by the end of the year, so that we can practice and strengthen those same skills in grades 7 and 8 to be fully prepared for high school. Okay, so that's our goal. I'll read it again because I know has a lot to it. So to establish familiarity and comfort with study skills, independence, expectations, course load using the executive functioning skills by the end of the year. By the end of the year was our goal for grade 6. This is still our goal going into other years, so that we can practice and by turn strengthen those skills in 7 and 8 to be fully prepared for senior high when he transitions into that. So I hope this video was helpful. I rewrote these notes like 3 and 4 times. I don't think there's a way to say everything that we do, and I'm pretty sure I left off something that's probably important, but whatever has, a hole in it, people tend to ask. So if I lacked, you'll ask the question and then I can supply it. I typically do 26, 29 minutes or less, and I really pride myself on 13 minutes or less videos. This one is long. I knew it would be long. There was really no way to do a part 1, part 2, because I knew I was going to flow right into those 4 things, and I couldn't find a good breaking point where it made sense to stop and to pick back up. So I apologize. This will probably be the longest video that you ever see on my channel, but I had a lot of parents ask. When I get a lot of requests to explain or to teach or to, make a video, I would like to do it, even if I dread doing it. I did not like having to write all of this down and repeat it in the video, but hopefully it was helpful to you. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. Until next time, shalom.